All right, YouTube, the biggest lie so far of the presidential campaign has been told, and boy, is it a doozy. Hillary Clinton, of course, now claiming that within her first month in office, she will strive for an amendment to overturn Citizens United. Now, I thought about this very briefly. It didn't require very many neurons to do, and I asked myself, does it make sense that a candidate largely backed by banks, corporations, and hedge fund managers is going to ban banks, corporations, and hedge fund managers from donating to political campaigns? Hell no, especially not in her first month in office. Hell, even in her first term, she'll need that money for re-election. This is the candidate who has received more money from these figures, from the super PACs and from the mega corps and the mega banks, than anybody else in the election cycle. That includes people like Jeb Bush. He's a fucking Bush. He's receiving like half of as much as she has. People, Mitt Romney would be the closest comparison. He was a big cash cow for all of these different groups to invest in. I'm surprised that the Koch brothers haven't said, oh yeah, we're giving $10 million to Hillary now because she's the corporate candidate. Citizens United did not start, by the way, the problem of big money influencing our elections. It's screwy. 99% of the population isn't included in the people making these donations. People who support third parties are they're screwed. Third parties are screwed in general by this system. It is dishonest. It is pandering. It's obviously wrong, and it does need to be overturned. We don't need unlimited super PAC donations from corporations and banks and so forth meddling in the elections. I think it's extremely unfair. Hillary's not going to be the one to end that. This didn't start the problem. I mean, that was already a problem. Big money in elections was a problem before Citizens United. Let's not kid ourselves. It just made the problem an order of magnitude worse, because what you end up having is you have a super PAC that can get unlimited donations. So before, this billionaire over here, he's capped as far as how much he can donate to a political campaign directly. That PACs, they've got, capped donations and so forth. So can't really do anything, and of course he'd probably get in trouble if he tried to run a bunch of political ads and wasn't registered specifically to do just that through some sort of organization. But if you make a super PAC, you don't have that problem. You can receive as much money as you want and spend it on ads and so forth on behalf of a candidate. So you simply have a super PAC set up in the name of a candidate. They solicit donations. They get them in unlimited amounts, and they spend an unlimited amount. That's the problem of Citizens United in a nutshell. That's a very stripped down, basic explanation of the worst aspect of the decision, but that's bad enough. I think most people understand that that's wrong. Hillary Clinton is not going to bite the hand that's feeding her. It's never going to happen. But let me suspend disbelief for a moment. Let me envision an alternate universe in which Hillary Clinton is actually an honest individual, does tell the truth, even if only from time to time, which so far I don't think she's done even once during this campaign. Let me suspend that disbelief for a moment and assume that her motives are pure. Let's assume that she really does want to overturn Citizens United. What would happen if she tried? Be blocked in a bipartisan manner, because the Democrats and the Republicans both take super PAC money. They're reliant upon it. It's like an addiction to them. The only way to wean them off this addiction is to get a party in charge that's not sucking at the super PAC teat for once, which I say should be the Libertarian Party. Do away with it. Remove that source of funding. Get an election system going, which is more fair. You don't need a sort of bipartisan but still partisan commission administering the elections. It makes no sense. That makes no sense, number one. There shouldn't be any corporate, banker, or union money going into our elections. There shouldn't be any bureaucratic money going into them. There shouldn't be any donations of that kind. It should be one person, one donation capped, and that's it. That's all that should be there. In an alternate universe without Citizens United, Bernie Sanders would have vastly outraised Hillary Clinton and become the Democratic nominee. Of that, I can assure you. Let me point this out. In the modern era, if Citizens United had not been around a few cycles ago, it wouldn't have mattered. because money was still largely raised in the corporate fashion. People liked the corporate candidates. They had no problem with it. In this day and age, though, with the social media era, grassroots support is now more important. Citizens United is the last stopgap in place preventing the two-party system from being utterly annihilated. It's the last stopgap in place put in there by a bunch of Republican and Democratic partisans in the first place. It's the last thing in the way of third parties taking command, of corporate candidates losing handily against people who may otherwise completely outraise them because they have more grassroots support. And that's really the kind of elections I think we need in this country. We don't need corporations and banks essentially foisting candidates upon us. And you see what's happened in this election is that was attempted and failed in the Republican Party. It was somebody who largely self-funded ended up winning against people who raised, 10 million here, 100 million there, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, and so forth. The Democratic candidate, the corporate candidate, barely managed to hold her own and win out against a geriatric socialist with a grassroots campaign. I think this shows how weak and vulnerable the corporate structure of the two-party system really is. And then you've got a third-party candidate now polling up around the low double digits. That's not good news for their structure either. So yeah, Citizens United should go, but if you think for a moment that Hillary Clinton, if elected, would go after it, you're completely and utterly fooling yourself. And if you think for a moment that even if she did suggest such a thing, that 99% of the Democrats in Congress would actually not be on board with it, you're also fooling yourself. Of course they wouldn't be on board with it. They would reject it resoundingly. They'd try to do it dead of night style. They'd try to ignore the problem and just hope that no vote comes up. They'd use some procedures, or they'd blame the Republicans, and the Republicans would say they'd blame the Democrats, just like always, just like every time something like that happens, and ultimately nothing would get accomplished. The two-party system is not going to get rid of the one thing keeping the two-party system actually in power. It's not going to happen. And no candidate from the two-party system is going to abolish it either. Least of all the person who is benefiting the most out of anybody in the entire cycle from that same decision. It will absolutely never happen. Hillary Clinton has very few working neurons left, and those that are still functioning, I assure you, there is not one little neuro impulse in her brain that is telling her that Citizens United is anything other than a glowing success for her and for people like her. Never going to happen. It is a complete lie. If her fans are dumb enough to believe it, then I'm not surprised that they're dumb enough to be voting for her. That's about all. Peace out.